So right now, I'd like to go ahead and introduce today's panel. Our moderator is Nate O'Keefe, co-founder and CEO of Roobrik. Welcome, Nate. And our panel, Mike Thompson, digital marketing manager at Brightview Senior Living. And then we also have Christy Van Der Westhuizen. She's vice president of sales and marketing at MBK Senior Living. So welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Andrea, for the intro and for hosting. And thank you to everyone for joining today. You all are at your desks with this thing running in the background, ready to tune out as soon as one of your other 10 million priorities jumps to the head of the line. Well, let me tell you why you really ought to stick around. Number one, and this is the main reason, this is not a canned presentation. This arose out of conversations that we had at Smash last year. You know, why aren't there more opportunities for real, authentic, kind of frank dialogue about what we're all doing and how it's working? Number two, it will make you feel good to stay because science acknowledges that you all have one of the hardest jobs, the hardest challenges in all of sales and marketing. And every day that you come in and kind of fight the good fight with enthusiasm and vigor is a real victory. Number three, you'll learn how sometimes you just need a slight nudge to get folks moving, families who are ready to move forward, but just need that right information or encouragement to take that next step. Number four, you will learn 3 incorrect and 1 correct way to pronounce Christy's last name. I think Andrea got it right in the intro, but a little bit of backstory there. And number 5, this is actually true. Mike might really disappear mid-webinar, and we will reveal in just a moment why that is. So moving on to brief introductions. I'm Nate O'Keefe, as Andrea mentioned. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Roobrik. I'm going to do like 30 seconds of sales pitch before getting to the meat of our discussion. At Roobrik, we use decision science-based tools to help older adults and their families, as we like to say, get unstuck. We currently support more than 500 communities around the country. And we pretty much guarantee that adding Roobrik to your website, your other digital marketing programs will immediately get you 20 to 40% more leads who are much better engaged and qualified than typical web leads because of where they are in the process they've gone through. Just a quick example here of how Christy is using us at MBK. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a call to action on every community page with something like, is it the right time for senior living? Is it time to get help? This launches the Roobrik assessment. Prospects go through the assessment, get a detailed report, and then opt in to share it with the sales teams. And pretty much the same approach with Mike at Brightview. We're integrated into each community page. Clicking the call to action launches the assessment, generates this comprehensive report and talking points, and folks kind of move forward from there. So that's me, and that's Roobrik. I'm really excited to introduce Christy and Mike more formally. They were the inspiration for this discussion today, and I really hope the main event. I've asked each one of them to tell us a couple of things about themselves, and so Mike, if we can start with you. First of all, what's the big secret? Where might you have to go with zero notice today?
Baby number 2 is any day now, so if that phone rings, I like Nate said, I'll be running out.
Well, we're super excited for you. I think, what did you say, 37 weeks?
Thanks. Yeah, 37 today, so the clock is ticking.
We hope we get to keep you for the next hour, but if not, you'll have 150 new people to add to your announcement list to maybe boost the incoming goodwill. Can you start by telling us a little bit about Brightview, where you're located, how many communities you support, and any kind of big themes, sales and marketing themes for 2020 that are on your radar?
Sure. So Brightview Senior Living, we're headquartered out of Baltimore, Maryland. We have just over 40 communities now opened in the Northeast. We have communities all the way down from Central Virginia all the way up to Northern Massachusetts, serving the Boston area. So Connecticut, Rhode Island are included. We just opened our first community on Long Island earlier this week, or was it last week? I lose track because we're opening roughly 3 to 5 communities a year right now. So growth is a focus. And we build all of our communities, and when we also operate all of our communities as well. So that's somewhat unique in our space, but there's a strategic growth model behind what we're doing. And one other tidbit to throw out there: we were recently named the best workplace in aging services by Fortune magazine. So that's a nice little plug for Brightview right there.
Yeah. And just a little bit about yourself. How long have you been with the team, and were you in the industry prior?
So I've been with Brightview for just about 3 years now. May will be my 3-year anniversary. So prior to joining Brightview and the senior living space, I spent roughly 12 years in the finance and insurance space. So I spent some time, several years at T. Rowe Price, Transamerica. When I was at Transamerica, I was focused more on the senior solutions, Medicare Part D, Medicare supplement, so somewhat familiar with the demographic, just different solutions for that audience.
Great. And finally, if you have one story or insight about your experience with Roobrik or similar tools since you started working with us last year, would welcome that insight as well.
Sure. So we started piloting Roobrik in late Q3, Q4 of 2019 for roughly 10 communities, and we were piloting with some of our startups, our focus communities, and just trying to get a good sampling of how Roobrik could provide a lift for those communities, with hopes that we would launch that for all communities in 2020, which we did on 1/1. So we're now across all 40 plus communities. We had a tremendous January with Roobrik implementation. So the big takeaway is with our model of meeting consumers where they are, the Roobrik assessment has really done a tremendous job in helping us meet consumers where they are in those micro moments.
Great. Well, thanks for the time. Christy, first, Van Der Westhuizen, just set me straight. What's it like living with 5 syllables?
Oh gosh, well, going from 2 syllables before I was married to 5 syllables after I got married was a big adjustment. It rarely fits on a credit card or any kind of medical form. Doesn't fit, but Van Der Westhuizen is how you pronounce it. And but I'm a very proud wife of a South African man, so that's how I got the name.
Well, thanks for the background on that. Can you tell us a little bit about MBK, where you're located, how many communities you have, and any big themes, either internal or external, for 2020 that are on your list?
Sure. So MBK is located in Irvine, California, which is Orange County. We have 32 communities scattered across 6 western states. So California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Colorado, Utah. And our growth projection is we'd like to be about 80 to 100 communities in the next 5 or 10 years. So, and currently, our strategic business plan really is acquiring properties, not building from the ground up. At this point, I'm not saying that tomorrow that could change, but we are very proud to acquire communities into the MBK family that have already been built and operating. So it's some big themes going on in 2020 is always going back to basics of the sales process. How do you connect with your prospects and their families? How do you use your heart to sell and to identify with them? And I think those are some things that we're working on hard as a company. Lead generation is a big topic. So is our CRM and marketing automation. Those are 2 big projects that we have in the next 45 days that we're rolling out. So we're really excited about moving forward and moving forward with an innovative program. So can I tell you my favorite Roobrik story?
Oh, sure.
Okay. This surprised the heck out of me. And I think it surprised the heck out of you, Nate. So unlike Mike, we actually rolled Roobrik out to all 32 communities in one day. And within 12 hours of the link going live on our community websites, so it's not only on the MBK master website, it's on each individual community's website in multiple locations. And we received a Roobrik assessment at one of our communities, again, within 12 hours of it going live. And our wonderful director of sales read the assessment, knew that we could be a great fit for this family, and connected the dots, set the tour for that day. So again, the day that we received their information, within 12 hours of it going live, we contacted that family. They came in, fell in love with the director of sales and the community. We were the right fit, put the community fee down, and moved in that month. I just think that is so, I was not expecting that, that quick of a result. So I'm not saying that every single assessment is that ripe and ready to make that commitment, but that was really, really cool to, on our rollout webinar with the entire team of what the heck this is, we already had a success story. That was great.
Well, I love that story, and I think it thematically it really is a good example of that nudge. It's what's the right intervention or experience at the right moment for an individual family going through this decision-making process, and that can be the single catalyst. So it's a powerful story. Well, thanks so much. We're excited to have you both here. I'm going to switch into kind of fake professor mode for just a couple of minutes, and this is not to talk about Roobrik so much as to talk about what the theme of the webinar is. Which first, the title. The title is the magic of higher funnel thinking, and we want to start by being crystal clear about what funnel we're talking about. This is not the one on the left. If you have folks coming to you in crisis who are needing a solution in hours or days, some of this thinking won't apply. It really does become more about kind of proximity and location and availability and some of the more pragmatic features of this decision-making process. We're focused today on that typical marketing funnel on the right. These are folks that are on your website at some point, hopefully opting in to become marketing qualified, to receive some dialogue back from you in some form. And then ultimately sales qualified leads, the folks that are kind of in research mode and really need multiple touches along the path. So I wanted to orient around that before moving into these next couple of themes. Next, I want to acknowledge that the decision to move into senior living exceeds the criteria for a complex medical decision by a wide margin. And this is where the decision science aspect comes into play with I think what we want to talk about today. First, there are multiple stakeholders, many with a high degree of influence. There are multiple valid alternatives. As many of us like to say, our biggest competitor is the home, and that's just one of many valid choices someone can make. The outcomes are really unpredictable. This isn't like a medical decision where you can look at the literature and say, well, 45% of the time you're likely to have this outcome, or 60% of the time. It's a much more unpredictable and opaque and less researched aspect of decision making. There are substantive misconceptions and preconceptions that must be acknowledged and overcome. And unlike doctors who really get to put on that bad cop hat if needed, we can really only be good cop. We can't and shouldn't sell on fear or shame. We can't kind of play that card. And that makes the challenge, I think, so much more difficult than, I come back to this, that there may not be a more difficult job, difficult challenge in sales and marketing. Not to say that the rewards aren't there on the other side, but I think everyone listening today should feel, hopefully, if they're not already validated, that this is a tough thing to help people through. And when it works, it's because a lot of factors that come into play to make that happen. One of the key features of complex decisions like this is that it's really easy to get stuck. Pretty much every objection that someone has will fall under the header of two things: either uncertainty, I don't know what my options are, I don't know if it's the right time, I'm not sure how it works, I'm not sure what it will feel like, or inertia. I know it makes sense to do this, but it's really hard to take that next step. After decades of living in the same house, it really can feel like we're set in stone, that our rock isn't perfect, but at least we know our rock, at least it's familiar. But I think there's hope, and that hope is also reflected in this image. We know these folks aren't passive. They are deeply thinking and researching. They're actively hoping in many cases for that blinding insight that makes it possible to rise and make a change with confidence and clarity, that makes it okay to say, yeah, I know this is the right choice. Now that's validated for me. And finally, I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to open up the discussion. Naturally, the next any discussion decision science has to turn to the Beatles: George, Paul, Ringo, and John. In medicine, there's a practice called shared decision making. In shared decision making, the patient is an active participant, even the most important participant in the conversation about a screening test or a procedure, or even a more high-stakes decision around life-sustaining treatment. It is a framework, a process, it is a path, and it's paraphrased here. So George says, meet me where I am. If I want to research on your website or communicate through text, make that easy for me, but also meet me where I am in my thought process. I'm uncertain, I'm unconvinced. If I'm concerned about driving safety or dementia, help me with that first. That's the sentinel issue that is my blocker for making the follow-on decisions. And then we can talk about senior living. Paul says, make me feel like an expert. I want to be the expert on me, to know kind of what my status is, that senior living as a concept kind of makes sense for me in my situation. And I want to understand my options and how they work. I want to be that expert, just like I am with so many other purchase decisions I start and make on the internet. Next, Ringo says, evoke my values and preferences. What's important to me? Show me, A, that you can meet those desires, and B, that you care enough to really understand what they are, that who I am, what's important to me is also important to you. And then finally, John tells us, manage my expectations. Who's going to call me next? What's going to happen if I take a tour? What's life like 6 months in? What happens if it's not a good fit? Help me feel like I'm in good hands, walking a carefully curated path with many that have gone before me. And this is a good medical decision with a good provider should have these components as well. It just, we often don't see that translated to some of these other even more complex decisions here. So I want to stop here. Christy, you pointed out that this is kind of what your best salespeople do almost instinctively, that there's magic, but it's not, this is not an uncommon theme. How much of senior living marketing should be capturing that essence of that kind of the person that does this really well and projecting that up to the first interaction? And we think of this as bottling up the qualities of your best salesperson and reflecting them on your website or in your marketing. And before you answer, I think Andrea has a poll that's tied to this subject. So.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. And the question is early funnel outreach and nurturing solely the job of marketing, or is it responsibility shared with sales at your communities? So we'll give a few minutes for folks to go ahead and vote. And we're almost all voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So split evenly was the winner at 44%, mostly marketing at 37%, and just marketing at 15%.
So Christy, how do you think about this?
I actually agree. You have some very smart audience members. I really think that our best salespeople, how they figure out what that path looks like and how they interact with the potential resident and the family members, they can figure that out by asking questions. And so I think marketing is great to funnel leads to us, but I think what's even better is when marketing can get some of those answers to us prior of how they want to be communicated to, what is their background. So I would say it's split evenly. Again, our best salespeople instinctively want to know more. They're curious. They want to know all about the prospect and their wishes and what does the ideal situation look like. If it's staying at home, then let's talk through that. What does that look like? What does that status quo look like? If it's moving out, what does that look like? So I think that our best salespeople are armed with a lot of questions. And why is probably one of the most important questions they can ask, because then that gives you all that detail and that background, so you can be that consultative salesperson to guide them through. But I think it's really split between sales and marketing. But again, the more information salespeople can get through the marketing process is definitely better.
You know, I think often there's a perception that that until the lead is ready to talk to sales, it's not the best use of resources or time. That they should be focused on folks that are closer to making a decision. Any thoughts on that? Is it, you know, building a culture where having that direct personal interaction even earlier in the funnel is something that can be, you know, welcomed or encouraged, or is it? I mean, resource issues can make that difficult. So there are valid choices on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in there. I mean, I think one of the things that we were trying to do from a marketing perspective was based on information that they were putting in their website forms. Where did they fall? Were they more of an immediate need or a lead that was a little further out? But after collaborating with sales, you know, they mentioned that they would prefer to have all the leads and better qualify them or not qualify them based on where they are. I mean, one of the things that I continue to hear from sales, if someone says they're 6 months out, cut that time frame in half. It's more like they're 3 months out. So, you know, that's part of the exploration phase from a consumer standpoint. They don't always know where they are, or how senior living can benefit them in the now. So what we've done is we've tried to bring in those top of the funnel leads and start that exploration a lot earlier, so that sales can have a very constructive conversation. So going back to the previous question, I think because of the digital landscape now, while I still think there are a lot of synergies between sales and marketing for top of the funnel, I think at Brightview, marketing has taken a bigger task of driving in more top of the funnel leads. We're still focused on the immediate need, but because of the volume, we see sales being a little bit more consumed with having to nurture the leads on their own once they're coming in. It's not that they're out not doing outreach and things like that, because that's a big focus as well. But I think, you know, rewind 5-10 years ago when digital was not as big, I think sales was a lot more involved with having to get more of those top of the funnel leads, and you were using more things like direct mail and other channels. But there's so much information at the consumer's hands now where they're doing a lot of the research on their own before they even want to talk with sales. So they're part of that decision-making process is already done before ever talking with a sales associate. And that's where the marketing and sales collaboration really goes hand in hand.
For both of you, does reaching to the top of funnel mean projecting senior living marketing messaging to the top of the funnel, or trying to reach people around adjacent issues that you know mean they're probably a good fit, but may not have the phrase senior living or, you know, in the terminology? Like what else are they doing that tells us that they're probably potentially a good fit, even if they're not Googling senior living? Is that something you've been empowered to do or have been able to budget around, or maybe there's lower value there?
Sure. I'll jump in. I mean, I think for us, it's been a very strategic process for us, where building content around a variety of topics, it's not a sales pitch, but it's more thought leadership. And we know that people are trying to educate themselves, and through those touch points, we're exposing our brand, we're becoming a thought leader, and they may not be seeking senior living at this moment, but there could be a micro moment 6 months from now, or maybe they've read a couple of our insight articles, or maybe they've done the Roobrik assessment, or maybe they've downloaded our ebook. We have a variety of touch points prior to that event happening, and there's a trust, and they haven't even talked with someone from sales, but investing in content strategies and thought leadership, we're starting to build trust with that consumer before those events ever happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Content marketing is really important. Educating public is really, really important. So we're working on all of that to be that educator and to stay top of mind also when they are ready to make that phone call or email. So we really have helped them through the process.
That's a great segue to our next topic here. And so this is Senior Living Smart. Andrea's team a couple years ago published a stat that indicated that 90% of the people on your website every day aren't reaching out. And our data from the Roobrik ecosystem shows that 80% of those people will explicitly state a preference for senior living. I was recently talking with a client who said, wait a second, you're telling me that 80% of the people on my site want my product, they want senior living, and only 10% are reaching out? What is that disconnect? If I could get just a small percentage of those folks moving, that would meet and exceed my goals. It would meet and exceed my company's goals. Do you see that dynamic with Brightview? Are the people are they all there in your funnel, and it's just a matter of activating them? And Mike, you can start with that one, or Christy, if you want to jump in as well.
Yeah, I think from a Brightview standpoint, we see that similar dynamic. Our conversion rates are a little bit better than that, but one of the things that I can say is the more focus that we've put on meeting consumers where they are, the more content, the more actionable items. Somebody may not need the assessment. They know that they need a memory care solution, but maybe they want a brochure, right? So it's more about meeting them in that micro moment, and the more that we've done that, the better our conversion rates have become on our site. So I think it is very similar, but the other thing that we put a lot of focus on is knowing that the vast majority of people that are coming to our site are in that mindset. Even if they leave, it doesn't mean they're not necessarily interested right now. It could be an adult child at work just browsing Brightview and multiple competitors. My job, though, and a lot of focus that I've been really focused on is continuing to stay top of mind, like Christy mentioned. So remarketing through thought leadership and a variety of other channels. How do we stay top of mind when they go back home and they're starting to browse again? What if they forget about Brightview? Well, how do I stay in front of them so that when they are ready to fill out a website form or call us, we're there and we have that right content or interaction that they're looking for, so that we can get them to make that next step and have a conversation with our sales directors.
Mm-hmm. I would say one of the things that really help people get unstuck also is something that we're working on at MBK right now, is how do we tell our story and the heart of what we do on our website? Because our sales directors talk about the heart of MBK and why we do what we do to our prospects all the time. But how is that translated into the digital form? How is that translated onto someone's phone when they're looking at our website? So those are the questions that we're asking to help bridge that gap and help people feel good about not remaining anonymous anymore. So we're really looking at storytelling and, again, the heart of why we do what we do, which we think is really special.
And you've done a lot with video in recent months or years, right? You're seeing some success there?
Yes. Yeah. We love using video as a tool to communicate with our prospects, but also video on our websites too. And that is something that we're continuing to explore through some professional video, but also just amateur stuff. We think that to us connects people very quickly, as opposed to many text messages or many emails. There's nothing like seeing a person face to face with you. Again, even if you're not feeling like being recorded that day, or you're having a bad hair day, or it doesn't matter. It's about the connection, and I think that is where our industry is truly headed.
Yeah.
And the same thing, Nate. We've put a big investment over the past 2 years in video content, ranging from video overviews. We do day in the life series. We do video testimonials with residents and family members. The static testimonials don't really cut it anymore. You want to put a face to those testimonials, and there's there's better transparency with the end consumer with that type of content. And we're using that on our website. We're using that in our marketing automation campaigns to reinforce our message. And who better to bring our story to life than our residents, because they live it every day, and they see the value of a Brightview Senior Living community and what our associates do to their day-to-day. So yeah, I think video is another component in that overall mix.
You both mentioned marketing automation, which is how we can kind of take this notion of nudges, like what's the right intervention or the right piece of content at the right time. Trying to do that manually is resource impossible, especially the more communities you're working to support. But I think for folks that haven't taken that leap or haven't kind of jumped in full bore, it almost seems like, well, I just need to add marketing. I just need to sprinkle some marketing automation into my ecosystem. But it is a framework and a tool. It's all in how you use it and what you set up in it and how you're segmenting. It's like the tip of the iceberg is I bought the product, or I signed up for HubSpot or Active Demand or something. Christy, you mentioned that that's a big priority for 2020. Are you doing any of that now, or is that the journey you're on right now?
Oh, we are in that journey right now. And it is a lot more, just a lot more involved than we were anticipating. So just creating a autoresponder with great content, great design is a total process and a giant project. So we're in the midst of it right now. When we roll out our CRM, I think it's really important to have a CRM that is married with the marketing automation platform, because that's how you get kind of all the data back and forth to both of them. So we're in the midst. We'll be rolling it out at the end of March to our company. But it's a giant commitment. And I don't think that when you sign up for marketing automation or you get your HubSpot account, you think, oh, it's going to be very easy. And it actually is extremely detailed. And there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. You can't just click a button and go, okay, great, the email drip campaign is done. No, it is not that easy. Take it from someone who really was not anticipating that. So we have a home office of 3 marketing gurus working almost nonstop at creating this program from scratch, because again, there really is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is very, very customizable, which means a lot of work, but worthwhile work.
Absolutely.
And I think it's not just, okay, well, this person mentioned mentioned driving, so let's give them an article about this. I think there really is to expect us all to be behaviorists as well as, content experts on each of these subjects is a tall order. I guess there's some hope that these platforms themselves, maybe the AI or they'll just continue to get to the point where they can, you can press a button and it'll give you your starter set of segmentation, your starter set of campaigns that can go with that. But right now, a lot of it is manual, and you either have to be working with an external group or have the internal folks that have that knowledge. I know, Mike, you all are several years down, or a little bit further down that path in terms of having the programs up and running. But
to Christy's point, I mean, it's been a 2.5-year journey. I mean, we didn't have any marketing automation at all when I joined the company, and now we have over 50 different workflows based on your level of interest, where you are, the type of living. So the content varies based on the input that you're providing. So we're using that data to try to provide the smartest content, and we continuously alter those workflows. We've started to see, at least last year, I haven't run the data for this year yet, but we're starting to see a smaller window between lead to PD and lead to and move in, and we're attributing some of that to that lead nurturing But that also has impacted, the length of those workflows, where before it might have been a series of 4 or 5 emails, where we've extended that for certain lifestyles. So there's a lot of learning, and to Chris's point, it's part engineering. There's a lot of if, ands, and branches and things that you really pull your hair out thinking about, like, okay, when am I going to remove this person from the workflow? And there's data synchronization. Okay, if the person did schedule a visit, now you're removing them from that existing lead nurture to maybe a PV lead nurture, which has different content. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into, and there is a lot of people power that goes into building these thoughtful workflows out. In addition to that, the only other thing that I'll add is, our sales directors are in the know with what's happening, but there are a lot of synergies. We have thoughtful marketing workflow campaigns that are happening, but there's also those personalized efforts that are happening at a sales level. So the way that I look at it is marketing is complementing everything sales is doing from a nurturing perspective.
And it's not risk-free. Each one of these, each campaign or segment is an individual email going out to a prospect, a person, an individual living their life, and who's going to be highly sensitive to a tone-deaf interaction or something that doesn't make sense, or a duplicate, anything that tries to take it. Once it no longer, it's supposed to be personal, but when the system reveals itself as a machine, it can be a turnoff. I think it's, and these are free and open systems where it's really easy to accidentally send the wrong message to the wrong person at the wrong time, or swap the name in the contact form field. It's like there's incredible power, but of course with power comes responsibility.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Well, the next kind of theme we had talked about, I think we've actually talked a lot about some of the themes around kind of playing the long game, and there's a sort of buy and hold strategy in reaching people earlier that requires investment. And rather than talking about the tactics there, I know sometimes it can be difficult to get buy-in around the table, particularly at senior levels, around investing in marketing and around investing, particularly in that, well, we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. But this is a new initiative that we don't have the data yet, but to get that buy-in, is that something you've found to be challenging, or found there are certain ways you've been able to message that value prop throughout the organization to get that buy-in?
This is not really answering your question, but I just want to talk about the long game. Well, number one, cricket. Do you see all that cricket? My husband grew up playing cricket, so I am very familiar with, the all-day cricket games, all day, and could go into the next day. So I think playing the long game. So unfortunately, I think in senior living sales, we sometimes close leads real early. Let's say they talk to a family and the family just says, we're just not ready yet. We're just not ready. Or we're looking for 10 years down the road, not ready. You want to know what a good amount of salespeople do? Closed. It breaks my heart to know that there are people who something could happen and we haven't been nurturing that relationship. So we're not staying top of mind with the person in the long game. We are thinking, and again, I'm generalizing. There are great sales directors who don't do that. But I would say that it is really, really easy to look at, okay, who's moving in within 30 and 60 days? Who's moving in within 3 months? Let's focus all of our energy on that. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying also look at the long game, because that is when you're building your funnel for future. And if you only work on what you have right there and not nurturing what's going to come in 6 to 12 months, when your pipeline dries up and you start at 0 because all the people that you've been working on move in, and you start at 0, that's real daunting. So again, looking at that long game, not closing prospects too early in that process. Or for example, staying home with home care. That doesn't mean that we close the lead. Heck no. That means they don't see, they may not know the value of a social environment. They may not know the value of what we can offer at MBK. So really getting our directors of sales to last resort, close a lead. But think long game, long term, because that's where you get a lot of your value, and your occupancy growth, let's be frank, is not just those quick move-ins. It is connecting with prospects where they are in their journey, but staying top of mind. So I know that didn't answer your question, but it sparked the cricket and the long game sparked a little something in me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the numbers, I mean, most senior living communities, the vast majority of leads that they're getting aren't ready to move in within the next couple months. I mean, it's if you just look at your lead to PV ratios, let's just say your PV ratio is your kind of immediacy. Well, then the vast majority are not. They're that top of the funnel long term. So we all have leakage, but we've all paid for those leads, and those leads kind of get deactivated for whatever rhyme or reason. And then we're out there chasing more leads when in fact we actually had those leads, but we just let go of them too soon. And I think that the providers that figure out that long game and put an investment behind that, which is resources, but I think they're ultimately going to see ROI on that because they're not having to continue going out and spending more money on leads or trying to bring back those leads that they once had. It's a challenge though, because I think we're all focused on occupancy, and we need to get those occupancy numbers up month over month. And I always have the conversation: a lead that comes in that is a year out versus the lead, and they're both financially qualified. That lead that is year out is no less important than the one that's ready to move in tomorrow. It's just they're at a different stage in their journey. But I think because of resources, most of us can't devote the same kind of attention to that lead that's a year out. And that's a problem, because that person's waving their hand saying, I need help. They just need help in a different way. And a lot of us can't provide it because of resources. And we spend a lot of time and energy to get those leads in, and we have a chance to build a relationship. It's challenging.
Yeah. We've got a few more minutes. There's one more, a couple more topics that we've thought a little bit about. This one I think is particularly relevant when we think about the decision process, in that in particular that power of uncertainty is where we see one of the biggest opportunities for innovation. If you can erase uncertainty or reduce uncertainty, then that can be the thing that makes that phone call happen or that outreach finally happen. Obviously, there's a long-standing debate on to price or not to price, and then a sub-debate on how to articulate pricing in a way that is consumable. Mike, where are you and Brightview on that now?
That's a big initiative this year for us. Right now, we do not have pricing on the site. We do have some resource guides around the comparison between staying at home versus living in a senior community like a Brightview. But that's a big pilot for this year. We know that a lot of providers are starting to show pricing transparency on their site. So we want to provide that. We know that consumers are looking for that. So that will be a pilot that we're rolling out at some point this year in 2020.
Do y'all think that people want precision, or do you they want to know they want a quote or an estimate, or do you think they just want to have when we think about the kind of decision science piece of it, and that that point in the process where it's should I make the phone call or not? Our sense is it's more about a range. It's more about I just want to know that this feels like the kind of thing I could imagine myself driving.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a car, right? They don't need to know the car with all the amenities. They want to know a starting price, and they know that conversation, the care needs, all that kind of stuff, the apartment style, is it going to have upgraded amenities, things like that. I think that's going to alter, and they know that, but they want that starting range to at least figure out, okay, is Brightview a fit for me financially, or do I need to look elsewhere?
Yeah, agreed. So we put our pricing on our websites. So most of them are starting at rates. Some of them are ranges, but we believe that we want to be very transparent, but also explain that the rent is not just the rent. I think that's really important for consumers to understand. Rent means a whole lot more than just rent. Does it include meals? Does it include housekeeping and laundry and all the things that when you look at a cost comparison guide, all of those things are not included in your house mortgage, right? Those are extras. Well, our rent is all inclusive, if you will, of all of those amenities, minus care and other things. But so we do believe in transparency, and that is something that we have started doing just a few months ago. So we're really happy, and our directors of sales really at the community level really like having the pricing on their websites too, because it helps people do a little bit of self-qualification before they pick up the phone. We have not seen a drop-off. One of our biggest concerns was we'd see a drop-off of leads, and we have not seen that at all.
Have you gotten any indication, and it may still be too early, but that folks are showing up feeling informed about that and repeating that back to the people they're talking to? So it says that you start at $4,000, or is that becoming part of the dialogue in a measurable way yet, or is it still kind of anecdotal?
Anecdotal at this point. I think a few more months we'll have a lot more analytics behind that, but anecdotally right now we have no way of measuring just yet.
I just saw a study that showed that that families end up paying between 15 to 20% more than their stated budget. And I just saw that yesterday, so we haven't even talked about that yet. Yeah. Which I think is, it kind of goes to that car analogy, Mike, where you show up at the lot knowing you want to pay $30,000, but you see CarPlay in there, and you're like, oh, the leather really is nice, and so I can go up to 33, 34. And when I see that month to month, it's not so bad. And I think that's the alternate side of the pricing debate is the average consumer, you could say, does not have the the kind of presence of mind or the kind of knowledge of their own decision process to really put that into context because it's such a foreign purchase for them. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I do think something that helps them self-select and say, this, I can imagine myself doing this is what we kind of see.
And I think it ultimately starts to, again, build that trust. The more trust that you can get, the better position your brand's going to be. Yeah.
Kind of move away from if you have to ask, you can't afford it, to if you have to ask, you're totally normal like everybody else out there. Please ask. Yeah. As the status quo. Andrea, how are we on time? I know we wanted to leave some time for Q&A. We've got a couple other items that we had kind of brainstormed ahead of time, but we want to be respectful of the process and everyone else's time as well.
Sure, we have about 12 minutes left. We have a couple of questions in queue, but if you want to go for 5 more minutes and then we can start the questions.
Sure. There's one more. This is always that $1 million question. Is there room in a sales and marketing portfolio for third-party referrals? Christy, you and MBK say yes, there is a place, but kind of how do you manage that, and how do you keep it from becoming too much of a crutch, or just developing bad habits from that?
Yeah. So we really believe that our referral partners are an extension of our marketing efforts. They market on behalf of our communities, and so we're very appreciative of that. One thing that I will say is it's really important to have a good relationship with your referral sources if you choose to use them. We kind of consider them some of our best friends that we invite to events and we communicate with regularly. Is also stay top of mind with them too, because out of sight, out of mind can definitely affect your referral sources as well. But I think that it's important that we still really focus on outreach in the general market. We're really working hard at our friends, family, and resident referral program, because we know that those closing ratios are sky high compared to every other referral source out there. So we're working on a few different things to make sure that we're staying balanced and not just depending on this one source, but we're depending on a few different sources. But we really feel comfortable utilizing our paid referral sources because we feel like they're an extension of our marketing efforts, and we appreciate them for that.
That's the West Coast perspective, Mike. How do East Coasters do it?
So I'll start with saying we definitely rely heavily on referral sources, but we have launched sales initiatives around generating more non-paid referral sources. So really establishing those community relationships, but also establishing those external paid referral source relationships with more of the community-focused type of referral sources. So we made a strategic decision in 2019 to no longer use A Place for Moms. So that was a big responsibility on marketing to generate a lot more leads. And we saw a 95% lift in digital leads last year compared to 2018 to help. We actually, I think, are a proof case that you can replace those large aggregator referral sources, but it does take a lot of effort from your marketing team to do so. So, we did do that. But again, we do rely heavily on referral sources. Outreach is a huge component. We see a lot of the internal referral sources, like Christy had mentioned, our close ratios with those are phenomenal, but it's a little bit of a different approach. Again, where we've chosen not to go with the big aggregator and focus more on our own generated leads, whether that's from sales, working those established relationships, or from marketing, bringing in those leads.
Yep. When you all get leads from those sources, do they go directly to sales, or do they also flow back into a nurturing program, or is it a separate bucket?
Yeah, so because I don't see those. They're typically, a paid referral or a non-paid referral, whether it be an elderly law attorney or a case manager, they're sending that. So that's more of an offline lead. They end up getting into nurture campaigns, but it's more downstream. I can't activate them into the nurture campaigns until they're activated in the CRM. So it's not instant like it is a web lead where they fill out a form and then they're getting a thank you email and kind of moving along the process.
Yeah. One of the things I love about both you guys is you're so good at kind of traversing that great distance between talking about kind of bulk, like, hundreds, thousands of leads, and then taking it right down to an individual and a story and the mission and reason behind that. And that might be a good note for us to wrap up on today is, we talk with almost all the providers we talk to want to be helpers no matter what. And that matches our mission as well. And sometimes that means spending uncompensated time making social service referrals. Sometimes that means recommending a competitor, as happened in the famous Miracle of 34th Street. We don't have it at Macy's, Gimbel's down the street does. From a consumer perspective, the hope is that this builds trust and yields a reputational benefit down the line. Do either of you all have any, agree or disagree, but have any formal practices or policies around how do we work with people that are probably not going to be a fit for us? And what do we do about that?
So totally agree with this. I mean, really, I hope that all of us are in the business to make a difference. And it's one family at a time. And that's what we really feel like is if we're not a fit for a certain family, maybe a community down the street is, and of course we want them to be a part of our MBK family, but if it's not a fit, then we feel very comfortable referring them to someone else, because we understand that just creates much better trust for the industry in general, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say it any better. I think it's spot on. I think we're all in the business of helping people, even if at times that's competitors where that prospect, just may not, for whatever rhyme or reason, it's not a fit for a Brightview. There are a ton of options, and we still want them to have a great experience and a great interaction with Brightview as a brand. And that could trickle into them referring somebody else, one of their friends, to a Brightview, where Brightview is a better fit for them.
Yeah.
So.
Are these formal processes that live in a playbook, or do you kind of rely on individuals with those interactions to make judgment calls and to use their sort of local knowledge to do that?
It's not written in our playbook, but it probably should be.
And yeah, there's nothing in a playbook for us. It's more, community knowledge, knowing the local competitors, and really establishing those relationships.
Well, that concludes the formal portion of our discussion today. I'm so appreciative of your time and sharing your expertise. If there are any questions, Andre, we're happy to spend a minute or two, seeing if we can help with those.
Sure. We do have a couple of questions. We have a question about presenting the higher funnel lead to the executive team in terms of getting buy-in. So do any of the participants have tips on presenting to finance leadership team to demonstrate value and ROI? And Christy, you're laughing, so I'm guessing.
Because I think it's because it's really important that we have a seat at the table. The great thing about my position is that I represent sales and marketing, so I can talk freely about kind of that both sides of the coin, if you will. But I think it's really important to use industry knowledge when you're talking to executives, but having a seat at the table is probably the number one most important thing when you are talking about the value of what marketing is doing. But I would also say come prepared with numbers and data to also give color to what you are presenting and potentially what you're asking for.
Yeah, I think if you're only, from a marketing perspective, if you're only chasing those immediate needs, you're likely not going to sustain that and fill your communities. You're building your leads for tomorrow. So a lead comes in today and they're 6 months out, or say 3 months out. You're building those move-ins 3 months away from now. So you have to constantly be looking at your life cycle of your prospects from a type of living perspective and starting to build those out so that you constantly have leads in the pipeline.
Great. We have another question. Other than how typically a Roobrik tool is used, has anyone already used it in a different way for future use, or are you planning on doing something different with the Roobrik tool?
Sure. So in a lot of our email campaigns, we will include a link within the email. So that's something that we've used in the past and will continue to use. Sometimes when we've procured email lists as well, we make sure that we include the Roobrik link on those emails as well, so they turn into actual leads. So yeah, but I think there are other ways, but those are on the website, and then in some of our drip campaigns we use the link.
Great.
Yeah, we've started to deploy it in different ways and just having it front and center on the website. We're putting it in lead nurture campaigns where applicable. We're using it to, leads that maybe were deactivated. It's a way to kind of re-engage someone. We've seen some success with that. It hasn't been deployed across a ton of communities, but we've seen some really good small case studies with that. All of our sales directors have the various assessments so they can have those sent out on a one-to-one conversation. Maybe somebody's coming in for a personal visit and maybe the family's not on the same page. Maybe that's a starting point. So there are different approaches versus just having it front and center on the website. It's not just about generating new leads. It's a way to re-engage. It's the way to move people along. So yes, I think the answer is yes, absolutely. Some we've deployed more than others.
Great.
We think of it as that kind of that Swiss Army knife, where wherever you have people in whatever channel they're in, who uncertainty or inertia are holding them back, giving them something to do that allows them to move forward on their own terms, whether that be live chat, whether that be Roobrik. It is about that right intervention at the right time and just surfacing that enough that that you can get those folks unstuck.
Great. And one last question. This is a good one. Is Roobrik difficult to get up and running?
No? Nate?
No. I thought it was extremely seamless. I think the team over there was very hands-on and helping us get everything deployed pretty quickly. So, I mean, you do need a little bit of time, especially, well, I think it also varies on the amount of communities, but yeah, our experience was great with the implementation component.
Terrific. Anything you want to say, Nate?
Just thank you again, Andrea and Senior Living Smart, for hosting another fun discussion. And of course, to Mike and Christy. Mike, good luck in the coming weeks. I think you guys tend to be on the circuit, whether that's going to be Tampa or Las Vegas or some of the other shows this year. And I hope folks feel free to introduce themselves that have joined today. I definitely highly recommend it as a good use of everyone's time to connect in person when you can. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Nate. Thanks, Christy.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.